Here we are at ANSTO, the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation. We're in the foyer of HIFAR, the nuclear reactor, and I have here with me John Mulcair. Hello John, and thanks for inviting us along to ANSTO today.
Good morning, Anna. Lovely to have you along.
Thank you. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about the HIFAR and about some of the displays you have here?
Sure. Maybe we'll just take a bit of a walk around here before we go into the reactor itself, because the reactor itself is obviously encased in large amounts of concrete and steel and heavy water and so on to protect everyone. But we've actually had a scale model made of the reactor itself, and this is it here. As you can see, it's quite small. It's about the size of a domestic washing machine, or a bit larger.
Doesn't look too dangerous.
Well, it actually holds about 7 kilos of uranium-235, and it's very much smaller than a power reactor. This is a research reactor that we operate here, and the whole reactor contains about 7 kilos of uranium-235, and that compares to a normal power reactor, which would hold anywhere between 75 tonnes and 150, 190 tonnes of fuel. So you're talking about a very much different beast. So we use this machine to make nuclear medicines. We use it to irradiate materials such as silicon, and in fact the camera which is shooting us now is probably using silicon which was made in this reactor, or was irradiated in this reactor, for its charge couple device.
Well, we're all for it.
Good. We're getting the images then. Perhaps if I could show you a full fuel element here. This is actually a full-sized fuel element that goes into the reactor. It's worth about $30,000, and in it, the part where the nuclear reaction takes place, which holds the uranium-235, is in this section here. And inside it, because it's hollow, we place targets, and inside those targets are particular substances which are irradiated by the nuclear reaction taking place inside the reactor. When they are irradiated as required, they are then taken out and they're transferred to our nuclear medicine production facility. And we make nuclear medicines now for more than 200 nuclear medicine centres in the country. And we also export to New Zealand and Southeast Asia. And it's one of the fastest growing parts of modern medicine. You simply don't hear anymore of people being opened up to have a look at what's wrong with them. Using non-invasive procedures like nuclear medicine, a simple injection or an ingestion of a nuclear medicine can provide living images for specialists to see what's wrong with a particular organ in a person's body. And it's growing so fast that we expect that on current rate of usage, that every Australian will have a nuclear medicine procedure in their lifetime. That's on average. So it's a considerable business for ANSTO.
And it's within everybody's interest, by the sound of things, to support the work here, as they will be affected by it sometime in their lifetime, most likely.
Well, we believe that Australia should be self-sufficient in such an important part of medicine. And you see countries like the United States, which have been up till now largely reliant on imports for their nuclear medicines, are now actively looking at, well, seeing it's such a strategic part of medicine, should we really be looking at establishing a reactor, which they are doing, or refurbishing a reactor in the United States now, to start making their own.
So we're actually on the cutting edge. We're leading in this area, are we?
Well, it's a pretty common part of medicine these days, and but it's mainstream. But there are some very interesting developments taking place in it. And one of the reasons that we say that we need a replacement reactor here is that our current reactor, which is now more than 40 years old, simply doesn't have the grunt to produce the new radiopharmaceuticals which are being made elsewhere, which are for therapy. Most of the nuclear medicines which we make and which are currently used around the world are for diagnosis. And but now there are a growing number of new nuclear medicines which can be used for therapies, and that's what we're really interested in.
Okay, it sounds good. And what is the possibility of being forced to build a reactor somewhere else? Is it most likely to be built here?
Well, obviously the government would like it to be built here, but there is an EIS process underway at the moment, and the draft EIS will be available to the public for comment in the probably in the third quarter of the year. And after Environment Australia collects all of the input from the public, it will then assess the EIS, and then it will be up to the government and the Minister for the Environment to make a decision on whether this is a suitable site for it.
And do you feel like it would be beneficial to have it somewhere else, or would you think this is the best place for it?
Well, we believe there are a number of quite compelling reasons for it to be kept here. The one, we've spoken a fair bit about nuclear medicines. Nuclear medicines, by their very nature, decay because the radiation decays. Therefore, you've got to be close to a modern big airport to get it to all of your nuclear medicine users. We don't believe that many of our staff would be particularly interested in moving to very remote areas.
And they're fairly specialised fields that they're working in. I mean, it's not easy just to replace them from other areas.
Yes, very much so. Also, very importantly, is that this place is used extensively by researchers in universities and in other research organisations. If you're going to make it extremely difficult for them to get to, they're not going to use it. So that becomes self-defeating. We would also say that we have a very good safety record of 40 years. We've never had an incident here which has affected our community. And then probably finally there is the very compelling reason that if we were to move elsewhere, we're going to have to duplicate this place, and you're probably looking at it at least doubling, perhaps even more, the cost of a replacement reactor.
Sure. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to tell us about in this room?
Can I go and have a look?
Yeah, let's look at the real thing then.
A few more in, I think.
Here to dive.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Yes, mate. Thank you. Okay, the reason we have an airlock here is that the building inside, just excuse me if you would mind, the building inside is actually had lower than air pressure, so that if all of the safety systems inside the reactor broke down and there was a release of radioactivity, and the building, which is half-inch thick steel, also was breached, that for a long, long time there'd be air coming in rather than radioactive materials going out. And that's one of the main differences between this reactor and Chernobyl. It didn't even have a containment building at Chernobyl, apart from the fact that this is a lot smaller. In fact, we have 7 kilos of fuel. They had 190 tonnes. Just walk through there and up the stairs to your left.
Sorry. Okay, I have here with me Dr. Sue Town. She's the operations engineer, and she works in here in the control room. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Basically looking after running the reactor for a whole month. And that just involves basically being here, making sure the reactors run safely, supervising out power unloads when we take rigs out of the core and put new rigs in, and just basically overseeing running the plant.
And everything normally runs smoothly? Have you had any events that have concerned you a little, or?
Oh, not really, no. Everything normally runs pretty smoothly, and it's a very safe reactor basically, and we have a good reactor protection system, and you know, if we have a problem basically that will initiate shutting down the reactor, so it's a very safe system.
And how long have you been working here?
Well, it's a good question. Probably about 3 years, I think.
Right, and all that time everything's been running fairly smoothly?
Yes, yeah, we had a few problems last year with the bushfires which were round by, but no major drama and no threat to the reactor, so yeah.
Great.
Sorry.
Okay, yes, here we are right in front of the very top of HIFAR, and Sue's just going to give us a little bit of information about it.
Yes, this is basically the top level in the building. If you look over here, you can basically see the top plate area. You've got 25 plugs in there for the fuel elements and various other plugs for the course control arms. During a shutdown week, normally the top of the reactor here, the lid as we call it, would be lifted off with this crane, which actually rotates around the top of the building, which is a fully sealed, contained building.
And why do you take the lid off?
We basically have to take the lid off to get access to the top of the fuel elements in there, and also to do maintenance work on the silicon rigs and things like that. We radiate silicon in the graphite facility, and we often, when we shut down, have to do a lot of maintenance on these facilities. The other things that you can see here, the red and the green flasks are basically used for loading and unloading both 6-inch and 10-inch silicon crystals in the reactor, in the graphite. The silicon irradiations are controlled by this computer setup over here, because basically we need to monitor how long a single crystal of silicon is irradiated for to give it the correct dose, and that depends on the neutron flux in the graphite facility. So basically this system here is all connected up to all the silicon facilities in the graphite.
These containers I have here in front of me are the silicon storage pots. The open day visitors that just came through now didn't actually have to be checked, but we do because we actually went right up the top of the reactor. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Yana, because we were up that top level, and obviously we take safety very seriously. So what we're going to have to do now is just to scan your hands and the bottoms of your feet, and Murray's gear and his hands and feet, just to make sure that there's been no contamination picked up.
Let's have a look.
So both hands. Okay, and now the bottoms of your feet.
What's that little...
That's just picking up background radiation.
Okay.
Wherever you live in the world, it doesn't matter where it is, you are getting radiation. You're breathing it, eating it, drinking it, whatever, every instant of your life.
It's natural as oatmeal.
That's natural background radiation, and that's what's being picked up by this very sensitive machine. If there were any contamination on you, it would alarm, and we would then call a health physicist who's on duty 24 hours a day, and probably with where we've been, you'd probably have to wash your hands, and that'd be about it.
Okay, and the light would turn red, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Yeah. These big flasks here are actually used to transport spent fuel that's been taken from outside the reactor building. They're transported in these flasks on trucks, which actually come out of this airlock here, which is a much larger version of the one that we went into and out of the reactor building. Once they come out of the reactor, they're kept in a storage block inside the reactor building for about a year until they lose thermal heat. Then they're transported out here and cropped down to about 600 millimetres long, and then they're cooled again in another storage pond, which is at the back of this building. Then they're moved to other more permanent storage on the site. We're obviously looking at moving all of the spent fuel off the site, and that process has begun. So everything here is in process at the moment of either being moved to the United States or perhaps to the United Kingdom.
Great. This is the display area of ANSTO's Australian Radioisotopes Division. And behind me is the hot cells. And Renata is going to tell me a little bit about the Australian radioisotopes.
Australian Radioisotopes is actually the commercial arm of the Radiopharmaceutical Research and Development Division. And Australian Radioisotopes make the radiopharmaceuticals that are sent out to the hospitals. In order to manufacture technetium-99m, which is one of the radiopharmaceuticals, it has to be separated from molybdenum, and that separation is done in some of these hot cells back here.
Michael Druce is the production manager of Radiopharmaceutical Division.
Okay, this is one of our hot cells that we use for producing isotopes. This one is used for producing molybdenum-99, which is used to manufacture technetium generators. We radiate targets up in the reactor, in the HIFAR reactor, and bring them down here to process them. The yellow light that you can see is because we use sodium vapour lamps inside the cell, just because they give us a more even light.
So this is not radioactive?
There's no radioactivity on this side of the window. The window itself is made from special glass which is impregnated with lead, and the actual window we're looking through here is about 3 feet thick with that lead glass, so no radiation comes out here.
So how much are this operation worth, these arms here that you're using?
Approximately $40,000 to $50,000 a piece, and if anything goes wrong, it's anything from $2,000 to $2,500, maybe $3,000 for repairs.
So we really need to be quite careful with them.
Very careful, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for showing that to us anyway, because we're very interested in how they really work. Can you pick up a tissue for us?
Another tissue? Sure.
Thank you very much.